The groom, Thomas Nevada Smith, was furious. No one called him Thomas or Tom. It's always just Nevada. He himself did not understand where this name came from because he was born in Colorado. One of the panicked bridesmaids had just informed him that his future wife Pilar Landau had chickened out and wanted to talk to him. The fact that this mini-drama happened less than an hour before they were supposed to say their vows compounded the stress he was feeling. Running to the back of the Cornerstone Community Church, which was quickly filling up with their families and friends, he saw Pilar surrounded by anxious bridesmaids, sitting on a small stone bench and sobbing uncontrollably. He found it interesting that as soon as he approached the small group, all the bridesmaids disappeared, leaving them alone. "Pilar, darling, what's going on? Everyone is already inside and waiting for us. Tell me what happened." He believed that this was a common nervousness and that everything that had happened could be easily corrected and the ceremony could begin. But it wasn't that simple. "Oh, Nevada, I do not know if I am ready for all this." "Well, honey, no one is ever completely ready for marriage. Your nerves are normal. That's not the point. I'm only 18 years old, and I'm not sure I'm ready to be with one man for the rest of my life. I mean, it could last 60 years. This threw Nevada off balance, and he sat down on the bench next to her in despair. He was only 23, but being 5 years older than her, his friends regularly teased him that he was robbing the cradle. Pilar looked very mature for her age, and they were both deeply in love with each other, so he never thought about the age difference. "Honey, you know that I've never been with a guy until I met you, and now we're going to be together forever. I'm not sure I can do this for the rest of my life. Do you understand?" He didn't really understand, and to be honest, when the ceremony was less than 30 minutes away, he was thinking about how upset Pilar's parents would be, spending more than $25,000 on a wedding that might not take place, not to mention the fact that his entire family traveled 2,000 miles to attend it. He hugged her, and her tears left a big wet spot on his black Brooks Brothers tuxedo. He begged and coaxed her for more than 15 minutes. He tried everything, but nothing worked. The more he tried to reason with her, the more hysterical Pilar became. After a few minutes, he said, half jokingly and half out of disappointment, "If it's about monogamy, what if I give you a one-time pass to the gym?" Pilar immediately stopped crying and asked, "What is it?" "You know, this is a one-time exception to the marital fidelity clause." "Really? Would you do that?" "Sure, baby. We can talk about this later, but now let's go get married." And he led Pilar towards the church and their future together. Someday her father will thank him for saving him so much money, he thought and laughed to himself. Of course, in the turmoil of the wedding, the reception, the honeymoon, and the beginning of their life together, they never talked about it again. 21 years later, Nevada Smith was lying on a couch in the patio that they bought a few years ago, and he was happy. He was trying to figure out how time had flown by so quickly. All 3 of his children were already teenagers, and the eldest, Suzanne, was going to college in the fall. He and Pilar were quite successful and were at the peak of their careers. They even began seriously planning their retirement, which they both hoped would come within 15 years. In fact, they had been planning their retirement since the day they got married, but with children, mortgages, and other troubles on the way, there was always something to spend money on. But now they were confident that they could achieve their retirement goals. Yes, it was a good life, and he believed that the best was yet to come. The only fly in the eye was Pilar's absolute horror of turning 40. Her birthday was less than 2 months away, and he knew that she was very worried about it. Nevada understood this because, to be honest, for him, turning 40 a few years ago was also traumatic. Aging was a strange concept for him. Having lived through his 40th birthday, he no longer thought about it. He began to understand and appreciate the prospects that aging offered him. He was satisfied with the choice of his life path, and he was looking forward to the future. He saw Pilar leave the house and walk towards him, carrying glasses of wine, which she promised to fill. They both loved the couch on the patio and, when the children were not at home, spent many warm Southern California nights making love and falling asleep with their naked bodies wrapped around each other on this very couch. Pilar sat down on a 4-poster bed and carefully handed Nevada his glass. She sat in silence, staring at the pomegranate liquid in her glass. "You're thinking about it again, honey, aren't you?" "Yes, Nevada. It seems that's all I can think about lately." She sighed heavily. and he saw a small tear appear in the corner of her deep chocolate brown eyes, which he loved so much. It was those eyes that made him fall in love with her when he first looked into them. Nevada spoke sympathetically. "I hate to see you like this, honey. Please tell me, how can I help? As I said before, I will organize the biggest party of your life or completely ignore your birthday, depending on what you want. Just please tell me, what do you want?" Pilar leaned back in a semi-sitting position on one of the many large colorful pillows at the head of the bed and spoke seriously, looking him straight in the eyes. "Actually, I think I know what I want for my birthday in Nevada. I've been thinking about it a lot lately. I want to use my hall pass." He didn't respond for what seemed like hours, but in fact it was only a minute. But it was at this moment that time stopped for Nevada. His first thought was to admit ignorance of what a gym pass was, and then develop ignorance about the fact that he had ever given her such a pass. But then he changed his mind. "Pilar, you're not serious, are you? You've got to be kidding." She carefully placed her glass in the cup holder built into the headboard of the bed and said, "I'm absolutely serious, Thomas. I'm going to use the hall pass that you promised me on our wedding day. Will you renege on your promise?" Shit, 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 he thought silently. "Pilar, I remember my promise, but I also remember the context in which I made it. Haven't I earned your loyalty in the last 21 years? Haven't I proved my love and devotion to you and our family? You are a very devoted husband and father, and I am lucky that you love me, but it's not about you in any form. It's about me. I need to feel that I am still an attractive and desirable woman. But you are very attractive and desirable to me. You've always been like this. How many other couples who have been married for more than 20 years do you know who still make love 3 or 4 times a week? And please don't insult me by saying that I'm talking about your attractiveness just because I need to. And I'm certainly not making love to you because I have to. Why now? After 21 years? Apart from the fact that you chickened out 30 minutes before the wedding, I gave you a gym pass because you told me you were worried that you wouldn't be able to be monogamous for the rest of your life." Nevada had an obvious question that he hadn't even thought about before. "Look into my eyes, Pilar, and tell me that you've been faithful all these years." Without hesitation, Pilar looked him straight in the eye and said decisively, "Nevada, I'm offended that you're asking me this, but no, I've never been unfaithful to you. I haven't even done anything that wouldn't pass the husband test. You hurt my feelings. Well, I'm sorry the hell I'm asking, but you're going to cheat on me, so I thought it was an honest question under the circumstances." "It won't be cheating, honey, because you'll find out about it." "Pilar, have you suddenly lost your brain? Just because you're telling me you're going to satisfy another man doesn't mean it's not cheating. Do you understand that?" He was incredulous. "Listen, let's come back to this later, because, Nevada, do you have to be so vulgar?" "Pilar, what you are suggesting is vulgar, of course, but, as I have already tried to explain, initially I did not give you a pass to the gym so that you would somehow try an unfamiliar male organ." She started to protest again, but he just shut her up with a wave of his hand. "You've proved to me that you've been a faithful, loving wife for 21 years, so why can't you do it for another 21 years? There's something else going on, and I want to know the truth. Don't I deserve at least that?" Confused but still adamant, Pilar hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Okay, Nevada, but before I explain everything in more detail, you need to understand that this has nothing to do with you. It's all because of me. Do you believe me? I believe you think so, but how does the fact that you're ruining our marriage have nothing to do with me?" "Oh, honey, I'm not ruining our marriage. We're going to be fine. It's just something I think I need to do for myself. Why can't you understand? Listen to me carefully, Pilar. If you do this, we'll get divorced right away." She waved her hand dismissively at him. "Stop being so melodramatic, Nevada. You're not going to divorce me." "Pilar, I'm thinking of filing for divorce just because you suggested the idea, and damn it, I will if you get this crazy. I was hoping that we would be adults and it wouldn't come to this, but, Nevada, before talking to you, I consulted with a family law lawyer. Do you know what your life will be like after the divorce?" Nevada's jaw dropped, and he felt sick. He fought the bile in his throat, asking incredulously, "Really, you're threatening to take my family away from me if I don't let you, aren't you?" "Of course not, honey. I'm just pointing out the facts of life. I'll get custody of the kids and the house until Pat turns 18. In addition to alimony, you will have to pay me alimony for 10 years, because you earn much more than me. I'll get half of your pension because I don't have it. Do you remember how many years ago we decided to put all our strength into your plan because it was much better than mine? And you'll still have to pay for most of the kids' college expenses. You're not kidding, are you, Pilar? I'll sue for adultery and get it. You really should familiarize yourself with the family law of our state. Adultery is not even grounds for divorce. Our property will be divided 50-50, and when Pat graduates from school and turns 18, the house will be sold and the capital divided between us. So, now that you know what divorce costs in monetary terms, not to mention the psychological cost for your children, is this what you want to do with us? So for me to spend one weekend with another man, are you willing to pay that price? Yes, that's exactly what I'm ready to do, stupid. He growled in response to her ultimatum. Nevada, don't ever call me anything else. Listen to me very carefully. I can file for divorce tomorrow just because I don't like the color of your shirt, and everything I just explained to you is going to happen anyway. And there's not a damn thing you can do to stop it, so keep your mouth shut. It's going to happen, so you better get involved in the program as soon as possible. So I'm supposed to have a pass too? Of course not, Nevada. Firstly, I never promised it to you, and secondly, if I catch you looking at another woman, I will cut off your organ, and then I will divorce you so quickly that you will not have time to come to your senses. He was speechless. He was looking at the woman who had once been his beloved wife, and now stood with her hands on her hips, grinning. There was nothing more to say, so he just got up and left. The children realized that something was wrong between their parents that evening. They were acutely aware that their mom and dad hadn't said a word to each other all evening. They didn't even look into each other's eyes. Closer to bedtime, Nevada sat in the family room with a full glass of Jim Beam in his hand and stared blankly at the TV, which was not even on, trying to make sense of what had happened to his marriage and life in the last couple of hours. Pilar passed by on her way upstairs and sweetly informed him that she was going to bed. Nevada followed her about an hour later, finishing his bourbon, and out of habit headed for the master bedroom. The door was closed and locked. In 21 years of marriage, this has never happened before. My first impulse was to kick down the door and throw Pilar out the window. Fortunately, when he came to his senses, he just turned around and headed back to the family room, to the folding sofa. The next morning, he woke up from a restless sleep. He had a headache, his throat was dry and sore, and he was still wearing the rumpled clothes he had put on the day before. He went up the stairs like a condemned man. When he reached the master bedroom, the door was open. Then he realized that the house was empty. Of course, it was Monday, the kids were at school, his wife was at work, and when he looked at his watch, he realized that he was already an hour late for work. He quickly sent a text message to his boss, informing him that he would be away for a couple of days due to family problems. Nevada spent more than 30 minutes under a scalding hot shower, unsuccessfully trying to wash off yesterday's day. It took another hour and a half to finish getting dressed, because he involuntarily stopped every few minutes, trying to make sense of what had happened. He spent most of the morning and afternoon in the same condition. The only thing he achieved all day was to set up an appointment with a lawyer the next day and called the owner of the detective company they used at work for preliminary and annual checks of fiduciary data, financial services related to asset management. When the children returned home, they asked him what was going on, and he waved them off, saying that he and his mother had just quarreled and everything would be fine. He told them to go do their homework and not worry about it. But they were teenagers and didn't buy it for a second. Susanna just stared at him, then shook her head and left. Around 4 o'clock, Pilar called him on his cell phone. He decided to send it to voicemail. When he listened to it, he was amazed. "Hi, honey, it's me. If you get home before me, don't start dinner. I'll grab a pizza from Antonio's on the way home. I love you, bye-bye." There was a pleasant note in her voice. She sounded like a woman who didn't care about anything in the world. Unlike his wife, Nevada had the weight of the world on her shoulders. He spent the rest of the day back in the armchair with his good friend JB. He didn't want to get drunk, because in this state, there was no telling what he could do to Pilar. On the other hand, he didn't want to meet her sober either. He agreed to a light buzz and a warm feeling in his stomach. He tried unsuccessfully to sort out his emotions. It alternated between rage, shock, disbelief, and incredibly heavy sadness. In the end, he decided to behave accordingly to Pilar's behavior, at least until the morning conversation with the lawyer. Besides, the children were already on edge, and there was no point in aggravating this problem. When Pilar burst into the house with a pizza, she was beaming with a smile and happiness. She carried it all through dinner and the rest of the evening. Nevada behaved accordingly. They continued their usual pleasant conversations as if yesterday had never happened. Steve and Pat seemed to accept that everything was fine, but it seemed to Nevada that Susanna didn't think so. She looked alternately at her mother and father, as if searching for hidden signs of discord. When the children went to their rooms for the night, doing God knows what on their electronic devices, Nevada returned to his chair with another glass of bourbon. When the children were young, he and Pilar practically controlled their internet access like policemen, but now they decided that it was better for them not to know what their teenagers were doing. In addition, he was the owner of an account in their package services and had a function with which he could determine the activity of everyone. Wait, he had access to everything that everyone was doing. Just as he was about to jump out of his chair and rush to the computer, Pilar literally flew into the family room and jumped on his lap. She kissed him on the lips. See, it wasn't that hard, was it, Nevada? A dark, angry cloud passed over his face, but he let his indignation subside. He remembered her lawyer's prediction again. You know, Pilar, you still didn't answer my question last night. I can't believe you made this decision on the spur of the moment, so tell me why now. Pilar was sure that she had the upper hand and was firmly in control of the situation, so she just told him the truth. It's true that I'm afraid of getting old. That's a big part of why I have to do this for myself. But there's another gentleman at work, and we've kind of established a connection. We talked and came to a mutual decision to spend one weekend together. Oh, and by the way, it's going to be next weekend. Nevada visibly tensed and almost threw Pilar off his lap. Now stop acting like a teenager. Go to bed and make love to me. I'm sorry that I didn't let you into the bedroom last night, but I needed to show you clearly what you would give up in a divorce. She looked at him hopefully. Who is it, Pilar? It doesn't concern you, but now forget everything and go to bed. She lifted him from his chair and, taking his hand, led him upstairs. Nevada just agreed because he didn't think further arguments would lead to anything good. He got into bed first, and Pilar came out of the bathroom wearing nothing but her best smile. Damn it, she was still a wonderful woman. It was a pity that everything would end so badly. I'm sorry, Pilar, but that's not going to happen today. And he rolled away from her side of the bed. Whatever you want, indulge, but you won't be able to refuse me for long. I know how excited you are. She said it in a deliberately pouty voice. Nevada realized that she was probably right. Perhaps he should change his mind, because, most likely, a long period of drought awaits him. However, his pride would not allow him to do so. What a waste. He pretended to be asleep until he was sure Pilar was asleep, and then sat down at the computer. He didn't need a private investigator's license to find what he was looking for. His name was Carl Malden. Nevada had already met him once at a company dinner, but it was a harmless meeting. He made a mental note that he would give the information to the investigators in the morning. The only thing that was unusual on Tuesday morning was Suzanne's murderous looks again when everyone was leaving the house, including Nevada. Only he wasn't on his way to work, but to Miss Nessa Sand's family law office. After opening pleasantries and a declined offer of coffee, they got down to business. Nevada told Ms. Sand in detail about everything, including that he hired investigators and why he did it. He also gave her the name of Carl Malden. When he was done, she asked him some clarifying questions. She was silent for a few moments, gnawing on the end of the pen and tapping her finger on the table. Then she began to explain to Nevada the facts of life in the state without guilt, and the picture was not pleasant. Outraged, Nevada asked, Miss Sand, why am I the loser? I mean, she's the one who's destroying our family. It is difficult for me to answer this question. The no-fault laws were not introduced to specifically infringe on husbands and fathers. And you must remember that, despite the fact that this is the 21st century, there are many more deceived wives and mothers sitting in front of me than the other way around. The main goal of the state without guilt is to protect the interests of children who may be involved in the process. Secondly, It greatly simplifies the process. I don't want to offend you, but why should the state interfere in a couple's marriage just because they can't handle their own shit and one wants to blame the other? However, the only thing your wife can be wrong about is the custody issue. If you and your wife cannot agree on joint custody, the court, based on the age of your children, may allow them to choose which parent to live with. But I must tell you that in the vast majority of cases, custody passes to the mother. Susanna is 18. She can choose what she does without the jurisdiction of the court. Yes, but it still infuriates me. I'm warning you, Mr. Smith, don't do anything stupid. What your wife told you is the best scenario for what happens in a divorce. It will be much, much worse for you if you threaten or commit any violence against her or Mr. Malden. By the way, if your private detective firm does something illegal, you may be held civilly liable for its actions, so be careful. Of course, you can give Mrs. Malden all the legally obtained evidence of her husband's infidelity. The law does not prohibit this, but the main word here is legally obtained. I will prepare the papers to hand them to your wife at work on Monday morning. It can be done very publicly and awkwardly, but I assure you, it will be the only satisfaction you will get from this whole process. I'm sorry for being blunt. Are you sure you still want to continue? Yes. I'm not going to live with what she's doing. Mr. Smith, you're either the bravest or the stupidest person I've ever met. I think time will tell. Is your wife vindictive? A few days ago I would have said no, but now I'm not sure. Okay, then here's the thing. I need you to protect yourself and your finances, and you have to do it by Monday morning. It's not as difficult as it seems, but it will take some time. So start today if there is something you can do unnoticed, but wait until Monday with something that will be noticeable. She handed him the list and discussed its contents in detail. Unless you tell me otherwise, I will order her to be served at 11 a.m. on Monday morning. And one last reminder. Under no circumstances should you even engage in a verbal altercation with your wife in the period before Monday. It will only make your life more difficult. And again, don't do anything stupid. I'm serious. I'll leave you as a client if you even sneeze at her. You're acting like you expect me to do something stupid. I'm sorry, Nevada, but you're a man, so you're not that smart. And usually by this time the deceived husband is either crying like a child or plotting revenge. You're too calm about this matter, and frankly, it scares the hell out of me. I sincerely hope that you will succeed. She spoke almost humanly for a moment. She stood up and shook his hand. Good luck, Mr. Smith. I'll be in touch. As Nevada drove home, he wondered why he was so calm. He decided that the whole point was that he had already decided on a plan of action. He had no illusions about how hard the divorce would affect his life and the lives of his children, but he was sure that he was doing the right thing. He knew for sure that it didn't matter now whether Pilar continued her attempt or not. He couldn't be married to her anymore. He sincerely believed that Pilar had destroyed their family, not him. So there was nothing to be nervous or doubtful about anymore. Nevada took his lawyer's instructions to heart and was only nice to Pilar for the rest of the week. He was proud of his acting skills, but the only thing he couldn't do was make love to her. Pilar tried her best to seduce him and at one point playfully accused him of becoming gay, but to no avail. He managed to dissuade her by saying that he would think about it when it's all over. Pilar took this as a positive sign, assuming that he was referring to the time after her weekend, and nothing more was said until Friday evening. Nevada, I'm leaving. He ignored her. He debated with himself whether to make another attempt to stop her, but decided against it. Goodbye, Pilar. He said it firmly and with finality, the meaning of which she did not understand at all. Relax, honey. I'll be home Sunday night, and then I promise everything will be over, and I'll be your loving and faithful wife for the next 21 years. She laughed merrily and walked out the door. Nevada closed his eyes for a moment. He sighed, took another sip of his drink, and prepared to move on with his life. He looked towards the door and saw Susanna standing there with tears streaming down her cheeks. You've heard that, haven't you? Yes, Dad, but I knew about this before, because last week I overheard a phone conversation that Mom was having. What are you going to do? Come here, sit down, and let's talk about it. He moved to the sofa and patted the pillow next to him. I'm sorry to be blunt, honey, but I'm filing for divorce. Your mother will receive a notification on Monday. She sat down next to him and began to cry more openly. I guess there really isn't any other way to handle this, is there, Dad? No, baby. I'm sorry it's going to be so hard for all of us. How do you think your brothers will handle this? To be honest, Dad, they're teenage boys, and as long as their food supply chain doesn't break, they'll be fine. What about you, Dad? Can you handle it? No, honey, I don't think so. I'm so sorry this is happening to you, Dad. I love you, and I'll help you get through this, I promise. And she just squeezed him as hard as she could and started crying softly on his shoulder. I promise. On Saturday morning, Nevada told Steve and Pat about what was going on. They were saddened, of course. Pat asked where they were going to live, and Nevada replied that it was probably right here, in their house with their mother. Steve stood up and said, "Well, it's probably for the best, because Mom cooks much better than you anyway," and went to his room with his brother. At least he was smiling when he said it. Nevada laughed sardonically and went back to his thoughts. Later in the evening, around 9:30 p.m., when the boys had already gone to their rooms, Suzanne returned downstairs to talk to her father. "Dad, don't think I'm being selfish, but do you think I can get into the University of Southern California in the fall semester?" "Yes, baby, I'm sure. You may have to find a part-time job to help, but one way or another, Mom and I will make sure that you can go. I promise." "Dad, why is she doing this to us? I can't believe my mother would do something like this to her own family." Suzanne was tearful and very emotional. "I mean, a pass to the gym? Why does she think it's okay?" "You know, honey, when she first approached me with this question, I thought it was because of the promise I made to her on our wedding day, but then I realized that this was just an excuse she was offering to justify what she would have done anyway. This is the part that really ruined our marriage. If she didn't have an excuse in the form of a gym pass, she would probably just be making excuses if you really loved me. She was going to do it no matter what. I'm sorry for my language, Dad, but it's just tinny." Nevada laughed and then became serious. "Listen, Susanna, I want to tell you something. I don't know exactly why, but I feel like I should tell you this. In the 21 years that we've been married, I've never even come close to cheating on your mother. I don't think men are monogamous by nature, so this is the most valuable gift a husband can give his wife. I just assumed that your mom feels the same way. Promise me something, honey. Never marry a man whose ability to be faithful to you doubt. You shouldn't get married either if you doubt yourself." Nevada was lost in his own thoughts for a second. "Looking back, I think I should have listened to my own advice. Your mom told me, even though it was only 30 minutes before the wedding, that she doubted her ability to be faithful, and I ignored it. Maybe I should have just left at that moment. The only problem is that then I wouldn't have you or your two hungry brothers. So I can't say that I've wasted the last 20-odd years of my life. But her betrayal still cuts like a knife." Just at that moment, the doorbell rang. Nevada stood up to answer, Susanna at his heels. When he opened the door, he saw two uniformed policemen standing on the porch. "Sorry to bother you, sir. Are you Nevada Smith?" "Yes, officer. Is something wrong? Who is this girl with you?" "This is my daughter, Susanna. It would be better if we talked in private, sir." Nevada had an uneasy feeling, but he knew it had something to do with Pilar. He felt that Susanna was already an adult and had the right to hear what would happen next. "She's an adult, officer, and I'd like her to stay." "Well, I'm sorry to inform you, Mr. Smith, that your wife was seriously injured tonight. She is currently in Memorial Hospital undergoing surgery. You need to go to the hospital immediately." "Oh, my God," Susanna gasped, standing behind Nevada. "Was she in an accident?" "No, sir. It was a crime. I really can't tell you more about it. However, there are detectives at the hospital who want to talk to you." "Good evening, sir." And they walked back to their patrol car. Nevada turned to face Suzanne, who had her hands over her mouth and her eyes were wide with fear. "Honey, you're coming to the hospital with me. Go and tell your brothers that you and I are going away for a while, but don't tell them where or why yet. I want to get more information first." She raced up the stairs, taking the stairs two at a time. 5 minutes later, they were on their way. When they arrived at the hospital, the guards immediately directed them to the waiting area of the operating room and informed them that a doctor would come to them after a while. Nevada and Suzanne were stunned. Confusion and anxiety are a normal condition for relatives of loved ones in their situation. The minutes crept by like hours. Mr. Smith? What is it? Asked a tall, gaunt man in the same shabby suit. Nevada looked up and saw two men who were obviously the detectives the uniformed officers had told him about. This is me, and this is my daughter Susanna. Whatever you want to tell me, you can tell her. No, sir, I can't. My name is Detective Lieutenant Cipriano. He quickly opened and closed his badge in his wallet and returned it to the pocket of his suit. I need to talk to you alone. Please come with me. My partner, Detective Bunnell, will talk to your daughter. Nevada followed Cipriano into a quiet part of the hallway. Without preamble, Lieutenant Cipriano asked him where he had been around 8 o'clock that evening. I was at home talking to my daughter. My two sons were with us. Nevada wasn't a fool. He understood perfectly well why Cipriano had asked that question. What was your wife doing with? He paused and looked at his notes. With Mr. Carl Malden? For a moment, he considered lying to the detective to minimize embarrassment for the family, but then decided, damn, she made her bed and could lie in it. He sighed sadly and said Cipriano. Malden is her boyfriend, and the two of them spent the weekend satisfying each other's brains. He practically spat it out. He was so disgusted, and he was getting more and more angry at his wife by the minute. The fact that his phone was constantly vibrating in his pocket didn't help his mood either. Lieutenant Cipriano didn't even blink. We guessed it was something like that, so I suppose you understand why I'm talking to you? Yes, sir, I understand, but I had nothing to do with what happened to them. And what happened? They were leaving the restaurant. They were attacked by two unknown men, and both were severely beaten, it seems, with baseball bats. I believe your daughter will confirm your story, but we will definitely talk to you again in a more formal setting. If you don't have a lawyer, I strongly recommend that you find one. Cipriano handed Nevada a business card and left without further comment. Holy shit, this must be bad. And he went back to stay with Suzanne. Suzanne was in tears, jumped up and hugged Nevada when he returned. Dad, what's going on? I'm so scared right now. The man asked me where you were earlier. They think you had something to do with what happened to Mom, don't they? Honey, it's obvious that your mom and her toy boy, for that matter, were very badly hurt, and yes, the police think I had something to do with it. Where are the doctors? We really need to figure out what's going on. Nevada's anger was growing, and he was afraid that he would soon lose control of himself. He needed to stay calm, if only to keep Susanna from breaking down completely. A few minutes later, a short, slightly overweight woman in blood-spattered surgical clothes entered the room and introduced herself as Dr. Mason. I was the primary trauma surgeon who treated your wife. She's stable now, but it was very close. Jesus Christ. Doctor, please tell me, what's wrong with my mother? Is she going to be okay? Suzanne cut in, traumatized. Tell us what's going on. Mr. Smith, Miss Smith, Pilar was badly beaten. The most serious injury requiring immediate surgery was a fractured skull. As a result of the injury and hemorrhage in the skull, there was significant swelling of the brain, and we urgently needed to relieve the pressure. Oh my God. Susanna had completely lost her composure and was sitting with her head in her hands, sobbing hysterically. Dr. Mason focused her attention on Nevada. Mr. Smith, forgive me for being blunt, but this is not her only serious injury. She has two broken vertebrae in her lower back. We call them lumbar vertebrae or L4 and L5 vertebrae. We don't think the spinal cord or the nerve roots associated with them are badly damaged, but we can't be sure until the swelling subsides and we can get a better look at them. We are not sure if she will need surgery, but it is very likely. She also has many other injuries, including a fracture of the ulna and radius of her right arm. Forensic experts would call it a defensive injury, probably caused by her trying to block blows to the head. There are many other injuries that are not so serious. I'm not telling you this to scare you, but to prepare you for the fact that your wife will need careful care after a fairly long stay in the hospital. Susanna only wailed louder and louder as Dr. Mason listed her mother's injuries. Can we see her? It doesn't make any sense. She was put into a medically induced coma to reduce the swelling of her brain, and she will most likely be unconscious for several days. Before you leave, I would advise you to contact the intensive care unit today and give them your contact details so that they can give you any news about her condition. I'm very sorry, sir. And she left. He and Suzanne did everything the doctor ordered and went home. It was after midnight, but they woke the boys up so that they could go down to them and tell them what had happened. To say that they were in shock is a gross understatement. Nevada thought that maybe something was wrong with him because he felt absolutely no grief about what happened to his wife. Perhaps it was a defense mechanism, but it seemed to him that, given the circumstances, he should have felt more emotion. The three children were traumatized and inconsolable. Why didn't he feel it? He knew the answer. Anger at what his wife had done to her family overwhelmed all other emotions. She did it herself. It was all her fault. He had a lot of decisions to make about his next actions, but they could wait. He remembered the calls on his phone and checked it. His voicemail was full, and all the calls were from the same number. It was his private investigator. In his excitement, he forgot that he had instructed them to monitor his wife's activities throughout the weekend. Despite the lateness of the hour, Nevada called Bart Hudson, the owner of a private investigator's firm. Hudson picked up the phone on the first ring. Without any preamble, Bart Hudson said venomously, "Listen carefully, Mr. Smith. If I find out that you have anything to do with what happened tonight, I will personally kill you. Do you understand me?" "Hush, hush, Bart. I had nothing to do with this. Do you really think that I would hire you to watch me attack my own wife? This has happened before, and more than once. This is not an uncommon trick to distract the eyes. God, what a fucking mess this is. Look, Mr. Smith, to be honest, yes, they made love together. We have a video of them making love in the motel parking lot on Friday night on the hood of Malden's car. It's not very subtle for those who are supposedly cheating for the first time. But that's not the reason I'm trying to contact you. I have a great video recording of the entire attack made by my team, who were watching them at the time. Moreover, I think we can give the police clues about the identity of the attackers. By law, I am obliged to hand over everything I have to the police as soon as possible, but I wanted you to know about it in advance. Shit, I forgot to mention you to the detective who talked to me at the hospital. Damn, it's not going to look good. Listen, Bart, let me get in touch with Detective Cipriano and give him your contact information. I'll do it as soon as we hang up. Okay, but if I don't get an answer from him soon, I'll go to the police myself with everything I have. I'm not going to lose my rights because of you, so call me now. My first statement stands, Mr. Smith." And he passed out. Shit, shit, shit. It's getting worse and worse. Nevada took Cipriano's business card out of his pocket and called the cell phone number listed on it, expecting to receive an answer to his voicemail. Cipriano replied immediately. "Detective, this is Nevada Smith. We talked at the hospital tonight. I know who you are, Mr. Smith. Why are you calling?" Cipriano had been working for a long time and believed that another guilty person would try to offer some kind of unconvincing excuse in favor of his innocence. "I have to tell you something and provide you with some information. I'm afraid it won't be very good for me, but it's true. I'm a busy man, Smith. What's the matter?" "I forgot to tell you something important. I hired a private investigator to follow my wife this weekend." Cipriano exhaled loudly and said something that Nevada couldn't decipher. "Yes, but I just got off the phone with Bart Hudson. I know Bart. He told me that he has video, audio, and information about eyewitnesses of the attack on my wife and her friend. He said it might help identify the attackers. Do you need his number?" "No, I have it. Good night, Mr. Smith." Well, that was another matter. And the conversation ended. It surprised him, but it didn't shock him. Anyone who has been working at work for any length of time can no longer be shocked. Nevada and his children spent Sunday in a semi-conscious state. He called the hospital several times to get the news. Eventually, he was told not to call again, and that they would inform him of any changes in her condition. They also said that there was no point in coming to her, because they would not even be allowed into Pilar's room. On Monday morning, Nevada's first call was to Nessasan to inform her lawyer of what was going on. The bad news must be spreading fast, because before he started explaining the reason for his call, "Damn it, Mr. Smith, I told you not to do anything stupid. If you have anything to do with this, help me?" Nevada interrupted angrily. "I'm tired of people accusing me, Ms. Sand. I have nothing to do with this. You have to believe me." Nevada didn't think she would really believe him, but he told her what he wanted to do anyway. "I've been in this business for a long time, Mr. Smith, but this is my first time. I just want to make sure that I fully understand you. You still want to get a divorce, but you just want to postpone handing over the documents to your wife until she comes to her senses. Do you want her to be treated at the hospital? I'm sorry to say that, but you're cold-blooded. Maybe, but it's no more cold-blooded than what she did to me. So will you do it? Yes.